The history of the first days of Chernobyl. Shadow of Chernobyl. The power unit of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The first liquidators arrived on the scene. They did not know what was waiting for them, and acted as best they could, fighting against the deadly radiation. Many of them felt something strange, invisible, that lay on their shoulders as a heavy burden, but no one dared to speak about it. One of the liquidators, Alexei, was among those working on the roof of the reactor, trying to push the radioactive graphite back into the red-hot crater. His days at the facility were hell, but something else began to bother him even more. On the second day of work, Alexei noticed that other workers began to experience the same symptoms: loss of appetite, insomnia, hallucinations. What scared him the most was that he kept seeing the same shadow. She appeared sometimes at the end of the corridor, sometimes in the corner of the room where they rested, sometimes on the edge of the roof, where he barely dared to approach. This shadow did not take the form of a human or any living thing, but its presence was felt, as if it was constantly following him. One day, when Alexei returned to his dormitory after a hard day, he decided to rest. But when he closed his eyes, he saw this shadow again. She moved slowly toward him like a living terror, her presence draining the life out of him. He woke up in a cold sweat. It seemed that something invisible was covering his body. But no matter what he did, the shadow remained nearby. She became a part of his life, absorbing his strength, forcing him to lose touch with reality. The next day, Alexei did not show up for work. His body was found in his room. He died of cardiac arrest, but his face bore the imprint of fear. The doctors who examined the body were shocked in his eyes, which froze for eternity. The same shadow that he saw before his death was reflected. From that time, rumors began to circulate among the liquidators that this shadow was not just a vision. This is what remained on the land of Chernobyl after the disaster. An invisible death that follows anyone who dares to approach the scene of disaster, and that will never allow one to escape from its grasp. They called it the Shadow of Chernobyl, and always felt its presence, even when they tried to forget what happened. A victim of radiation that happened to people who were the first to rush to save the world. The last signal. In 1990, when work on liquidation of the consequences of the accident at the Chernobyl NPP was already in full swing, one of the former operators named Serhiy returned to the station. He was an experienced specialist, but what he saw after the explosion changed him deeply. One day, when he was conducting regular monitoring, his attention was drawn to a weak, almost imperceptible signal coming from the depths of the destroyed reactor. It was a low, almost indistinct hum that repeated itself at certain intervals. At first, Serhiy thought that it was just extraneous noise or a technical error. But when he tried to find out the source of the signal, he was overcome with an inexplicable feeling of anxiety. Serhiy decided to stay after his shift to investigate the signal in more detail. He connected more powerful equipment, hoping to get a clearer connection. Faint obstacles appeared on the monitor screen, which gradually took shape. It was a set of numbers and letters, similar to a coded message. He entered it into the computer, and was horrified to see that the text appeared in front of him. "We're still here. Help!" Serhiy could not believe his eyes. He knew that on the night of the accident, all the operators who were in the reactor hall died almost instantly. But where could this signal come from? Is it possible that someone survived and tried to contact the outside? Every day the signal grew stronger, but now it was accompanied by strange noises, similar to echoes of screams and moans. Sergei began to lose sleep, feeling that something invisible was constantly watching him. He felt that he needed to return to the reactor to solve this mystery. Finally, unable to bear the pressure, Serhiy went to the place where the signal came from. When he found himself at the entrance to the reactor hall, he was overcome by an inexplicable coldness. His every step echoed in the empty corridor, and there was an oppressive silence all around. Approaching the remains of the control panel, Serhiy saw an old, abandoned terminal that still had power remaining. The text appeared on the screen again, but this time it was clearer. "We are between worlds. We are cold. Help us." Suddenly the light began to flicker, and for a moment he thought he saw the shadows of people standing behind the remote control, as he had on the night of the accident. They looked at him with pleading eyes, as if expecting him to help them free themselves. Sarai, seized with terror, rushed to run from the reactor hall. But when he turned to take one last look at the remote, he saw one of the shadows slowly raise a hand, pointing at him. That same evening Sarai went missing. No one saw him again. But those who worked at the station after him sometimes heard a faint signal from the depths of the reactor. It was repeated over and over again, as if someone was trying to deliver a final message from another world. "We are waiting for you, Sergei,"